Thursday, August 27th, 1992, Tokyo, Japan. Nintendo is hosting their annual Shoshinkai trade show, showing off 240 games for the Super Famicom and Game Boy, but one game has people waiting in line for over an hour just to play for 5 minutes. It's not a sequel to Zelda, it's not a new Mario platformer, it's a quirky little racing game where Mario and his friends drive go-karts. Within 2 days, it would be sold out across Japan. Store clerks wouldn't even take deposits. And it all started as a failed experiment. This is the story of Super Mario Kart. In the fall of 1990, Nintendo launched the Super Famicom in Japan with 2 games. The first was Super Mario World, an evolution of their most popular franchise. The second was F-Zero, a fast-paced futuristic racer that blew critics away. Famitsu magazine gave it 37 out of 40, calling its sense of speed unlike anything they'd ever seen on a console. F-Zero was powered by a new graphics technology called Mode 7, which could scale and rotate backgrounds to create a convincing pseudo 3D effect. It was impressive, but it had one major problem. F-Zero was single-player only. That bothered Nintendo's chief software producer and the mind behind Mario and Zelda. Miyamoto had insisted the Super Famicom ship with 2 controllers. He wanted developers to keep multiplayer in mind. And yet, ironically, neither launch title let 2 people play together at the same time. Miyamoto felt the hardware's potential was untapped, so he devised a new project with a simple goal. Make a game like F-Zero, but for 2 players. He assigned the task to 2 talented designers in Nintendo's Entertainment Analysis and Development Group, and Sugiyama had been at Nintendo since 1983. He designed characters like Popo and Nana from Ice Climber, directed Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link, and had just finished directing Pilot Wings, a flight sim that also used Mode 7. Kono joined in 1986 and made his name creating overworld maps and levels for Super Mario Bros. 3 and Super Mario World. He learned a lot working under Miyamoto. Now, Miyamoto entrusted them to direct this new racing game. He'd serve as producer, a role he called, quote, pretty relaxed. They recruited additional staff, including a programmer who had helped build F-Zero and who had implemented a special DSP chip for Pilot Wings. The team got to work, but it was an informal process. There was no master design document. Kono recalled not even taking notes during meetings. They were more like chat sessions. Everyone sat near each other and team members simply walked up to each other's desks and talked. Then they hit a wall. A 2-player F-Zero game was next to impossible. F-Zero's massive tracks were displayed over an area of 100 screens. But due to hardware limitations, running 2 views simultaneously meant the tracks had to shrink from 100 screens down to just 16. No long straightaways, no sense of blistering speed. As Kono admitted, with more than 1 player, it would have been impossible to illustrate the high speeds of F-Zero. So, as a last-ditch effort, the team changed direction. No more futuristic hover vehicles. They needed something that suited smaller, winding courses, something slower, something fun. Miyamoto later described the vision: a fun, light-hearted game where you zip around unrealistically in cars, not the life or death world of F1 racing, but more the atmosphere of screeching wheels as you zip around in an amusement park. From that idea, the concept evolved naturally from cars to karts, and the timing was perfect. Go-Karts were becoming popular in Japan, fueled by the country's passion for Formula 1 racing. Many F1 drivers, like I, had started their careers in go-karts. There were plenty of F1 racing games, but almost nobody had made a kart racing game. The idea had enormous potential. There was just one problem. Nobody on the team had ever driven a go-kart. Sugiyama bought a book on kart racing. He watched videos, but a senior illustrator on staff, a veteran of the anime industry, offered some wisdom. No amount of research beats the real thing. He suggested the team visit an amusement park and ride actual go-karts. Kono brought the idea to Miyamoto, who initially shot it down, thinking it was unnecessary, but he eventually gave in. The team took a trip to the Nemu no Sato amusement park and spent the day driving karts. Illustrators sketched the vehicles. Programmers got a feel for the physics, and most importantly, they all learned something crucial. kart racing was really fun. Back at the office, the team even built a small remote control kart to study its inner workings. Unfortunately, a programmer immediately crashed it into a wall, ending that line of research. By June 1991, the team had a working prototype with 2 driving modes, one with a slow hover vehicle, one with karts. There was no actual racing yet, just aimless driving around a generic track. But between the 2 options, the karts felt way better. They needed characters that were instantly recognizable, even from behind. And one character immediately came to mind. Mario. Adding Mario and friends was brilliant for multiple reasons. The Super Mario series was Nintendo's biggest franchise. Super Mario World was the top-selling game on the system. But more importantly, from a design standpoint, Mario characters solved the recognition problem perfectly. As an experiment, the team added Mario, Luigi, and Bowser. It was a game changer. Kono recalled, "You'd be able to tell immediately whether it was Mario or Luigi by the color red and green. They looked good visually, and we were able to clearly differentiate their characteristics." That was the moment Kono made the call. This was now a Mario game. Super Mario Kart. The directors split responsibilities. Kono, the Mario series veteran, oversaw the game's overall presentation. Sugiyama handled course design, backgrounds and characters. The roster came together quickly. Mario and Luigi were obvious. Princess Peach and Toad made the cut. Yoshi, the cute dinosaur who debuted in Super Mario World and was already a fan favorite, especially with women and children, was in. Bowser joined, marking the first time players could control the Big Koopa in a Mario game. Donkey Kong Jr. was a surprising addition. Miyamoto said it was to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the Donkey Kong Jr. arcade game. And the 8th slot went to Koopa Troopa, the most common enemy in the Mario universe. Each racer got unique attributes, speed, acceleration, weight and handling, giving players real strategic choices. With the roster set, the team turned to track design, drawing heavy inspiration from Super Mario World. Donut Plains got a dirt road racetrack with narrow bridges. The ghost houses became Ghost Valley, wooden planks with hidden shortcuts. Chocolate Island was full of mud. Bowser's Castle had lava pits and dangerous jumps. Koopa Beach had soft sand and shallow water. Vanilla Lake was icy and treacherous. And then there was Rainbow Road. A bright, colorful track with no guardrails at all, but these weren't just empty tracks. The designers filled them with enemies and obstacles from the Mario universe. Monty moles popped out of the ground, thwomps blocked paths, ice blocks made courses even trickier. Different terrain types changed how the kart handled. Ice was slippery, stone blocks made you bounce. To streamline the process, the team created custom track editing software that let designers manipulate courses directly on the game cartridge, placing objects, adding walls, and even configuring the driving paths for computer-controlled racers. Meanwhile, head programmer Masato Kimura was obsessing over how the karts should feel. He struggled to find the right balance. The more realistic the controls, the less it felt like a fun video game. Miyamoto kept changing his mind about how the karts should handle, which drove Kimura a bit crazy, but Kimura kept coming back to the core idea, capture the fun of driving go-karts. The team also introduced a technique that would become a signature of the series: drifting. In real life, drifting was popular in Japan, but tricky to perform. You counter-steer in the opposite direction of the turn. The team tried this, but playtesters couldn't pull it off, so they simplified it. Hold L or R, steer into the turn, and you drift. Kono knew the compromise wasn't perfectly realistic, but it felt cool and rewarding. Players who drifted went faster around corners, easy to learn, satisfying to master. At this point, Super Mario Kart was a solid racing game, but it wasn't special yet. That changed when the team added a feature that would define the entire series: items. Even before Mario was in the game, Kono felt something was missing. Just driving around a track at slow speeds wasn't exhilarating enough, so the designers experimented. They added oil cans that players could throw onto the road, creating spills that made karts spin out. It added a whole new thrill. With the game now set in the Mario universe, the possibilities were endless. After experimenting with ideas like a placeable piranha plant, the team settled on 8 items. Green shells fired straight ahead or could be dropped behind as obstacles. Red shells homed in on the nearest racer ahead. Banana peels spun out anyone who hit them. Mushrooms gave a speed boost. A feather launched carts into a super jump for taking shortcuts. The star made players temporarily invincible and faster. Coins, a Miyamoto suggestion, because what's a Mario game without coins, increased your top speed but could be lost when you got hit. And finally, the lightning bolt. Arguably the most powerful item, it shrunk every other racer on the track, slowing them down and making them vulnerable to getting squashed. Playtesters loved it, but they found a problem. Sometimes items made races feel unfair. A player in first could get a lightning bolt and dominate. Co-director Sugiyama had an elegant solution. The items you got depended on your position. Players in last place had a much better shot at powerful items. Players in first got less useful ones. It worked perfectly. There was no guarantee a skilled driver would win. Upsets were always possible, and races stayed tight until the very end. But the system created a technical headache. The Super Famicom couldn't calculate item odds for both human and computer-controlled players, so the team gave computer racers their own unique abilities instead. Mario and Luigi got temporary invincibility. Peach and Toad threw poisonous mushrooms. Yoshi launched eggs. Bowser hurled fireballs. Some team members worried that hardcore racing fans would hate the randomness. They added an option to turn items off, but Miyamoto pushed back. He believed the uncertainty was the whole point. I think that indeterminacy, knowing that something might happen, is the most fun. Sugiyama agreed. Mario Kart is not Mario Kart without the items. A key characteristic of Mario Kart is how it's often the case that you can't win just with your driving skills alone. The no items option was removed from the game. The racing was locked in. Grand Prix, Match Race, and Time Trial modes were all ready. But Miyamoto's vision for Super Mario Kart was bigger than just racing. From the start, the team wanted a game mode that had nothing to do with racing. They tried several ideas, and the one that stuck was a mode where players hurled projectiles at each other. Early versions had problems. The arenas had too few walls, so playtesters drove around aimlessly and got dizzy. The team also ran out of cartridge memory as the racing modes grew, so they shelved it. But when the racing modes were nearly done, they revisited the idea. They added walls and obstacles to fix the dizziness. They replaced the generic ball attack with items. They gave each player 3 balloons, get hit, lose a balloon, and they added an exclusive item, the Ghost, which turned you invisible and stole your opponent's item. For Miyamoto, the battle mode was essential to the game's identity. The very fact that battle mode had nothing to do with racing is what made us want to add it. It strengthened the image of the game. It's not you become a world-class racer, but rather you get to race around and play in this go-kart with your friends. And no game is complete without music. For that, Kono brought on composer, a Nintendo veteran since 1987. Oka had composed music for earlier Famicom racing titles and had a distinctive style. Her colleagues called it Soyo-ism. On the older Famicom hardware, Oka had to compose music that still sounded good even if a track dropped out due to system limitations. She called it a sound puzzle. But the Super Famicom removed those restrictions. She called the new hardware Beyond Wonderful. Her assignment for Super Mario Kart was to create upbeat music that fit a racing game but still felt distinctly Mario. Kono gave her creative freedom, and she delivered. The hard-driving theme of Mario Circuit, the coastal vibes of Cooper Beach, and her personal favorite, the epic synth-heavy anthem of Rainbow Road. What started as a failed F-Zero experiment was now something completely new. A racing game with items, strategy, character, and personality. By summer 1992, the game was ready. But surprisingly, Super Mario Kart didn't generate much pre-release hype. Previews in game magazines were short, often buried among other titles. Leading up to the August 27th launch, co-director Sugiyama felt uncertain. He said, "I knew it was fun, but I didn't imagine users would actually like it that much." He was wrong. Super Mario Kart sold out across Japan in 2 days. HAL Laboratories who would later become Nintendo's president, reportedly snuck out of work to buy a copy, gave it a 32 out of 40, calling it exhilarating and more polished than F-Zero. The game stayed on Famitsu's top 30 chart for over a year. Days later, on September 1st, Nintendo launched Super Mario Kart in North America. GamePro gave it a near-perfect score. Electronic Gaming Monthly awarded it their editor's choice. Nintendo backed the release with a $30 million advertising campaign. Nintendo Power put the game on the cover of its October issue. There was even a promotional tie-in with Domino's Pizza, a scratch-and-win game with $25 million in prizes. The game hit the UK in December 1992 and the rest of Europe the following year. British magazine Control scored it 86 out of 100. German magazine Video Games called it the best racing game of all time. Not bad for a small side project. Super Mario Kart sold over 1 million copies globally in less than a year. Nintendo eventually bundled it with the Super Nintendo in several regions. By the end of the console's life, it had sold 8.5 million units worldwide, the fourth best-selling Super Nintendo game ever. In Japan alone, it became the best-selling Super Famicom game of all time at 3.82 million units. But the sales numbers only tell part of the story. What made Super Mario Kart truly special was how it brought people together. Friends unlocked every cup in Grand Prix mode, siblings battled it out in battle mode, parents raced their kids for the fastest lap time. One writer for the Sydney Morning Herald captured it perfectly. So innocently, Super Mario Kart crept into the house. I soon discovered that this game crossed barriers, both in gameplay and generations. And what's even sweeter, the kids didn't always win. It won a Parents' Choice Award in 1992. Other developers rushed to cash in on the kart racing craze. Sega released Sonic Drift, Atari put out Atari Karts, and clones flooded the market, but nothing came close. Super Mario Kart stayed on the Nintendo Power charts for 68 consecutive months, until the magazine stopped tracking SNES games entirely. It was the beginning of a franchise. Mario Kart 64 came next, then games for every Nintendo console and handheld that followed. Today, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is the best-selling game on the Nintendo Switch. The franchise has sold over 150 million copies worldwide. Many of the original team members are still at Nintendo. Miyamoto remains their chief creative figure. Kono went on to oversee every future Mario Kart game and now leads Nintendo's mobile division. Sugiyama continued working on the series and finally got his multiplayer F-Zero game with F-Zero X on the Nintendo 64. Programmer Kimura went on to work on Wind Waker, Super Mario Galaxy, and Mario Kart 8. Yajima contributed to Star Fox and Super Mario 64. Composer Soyo Oka left Nintendo in 1995 to go freelance, but Super Mario Kart stayed with her. Even decades later, people approach her to talk about the game. She once said, "I am truly moved to think that I have inspired children and young people more than I had ever imagined." In 2019, the Strong Museum in Rochester, New York, inducted Super Mario Kart into the World Video Game Hall of Fame. Their citation read, "Super Mario Kart's unique combination of familiar characters and exhilarating social gameplay produced a powerful franchise that invited friends, family, and gaming fans of all ages to the Mushroom Kingdom for an unforgettable ride." What began as a failed experiment, a two-player F-Zero game that couldn't work, became one of the most beloved games ever made. Not because it was the fastest, the flashiest, or the most realistic, but because it was fun. And because it was better with a friend.